US regulators are banning the sale of communications equipment made by Chinese companies Huawei and ZTE in their country. This act isn't recent, as it has been made and implemented by the Donald Trump administration, citing an unacceptable risk to national security as the cause. But the Biden administration has been compounding it, making it find its way to the headlines again. Could it be that Huawei is truly aiding the Chinese Communist Party, as alleged? Or is this all a big misunderstanding? Watch on to find out. As of the last quarter of 2022, the US has prohibited selling and importing any new Huawei-made communication products. This follows a resurgence of security concerns claim that Huawei was the CCP's lapdog, which makes their products a tool for spying on American citizens and businesses. On the other hand, Huawei has vehemently refuted these allegations, describing them as propaganda designed to harm its reputation. Huawei has even sued US boards to save its reputation, but all their efforts have proved abortive. Despite Huawei's claim of innocence, the US Federal Communications Commission's 5 members unanimously voted to adopt new rules that penalized Huawei. The commission chairwoman, Jessica Rosen-Worcel, said in a statement, "The FCC is committed to protecting our national security by ensuring that untrustworthy communications equipment is not authorized for use within our borders, and we're continuing that work here." So, the point is that the US is not budging, and Huawei needs to be ready to admit its faults. Both subjects are in a deadlock. But how did they get here? The history of this matter can be traced back to 1987, when Huawei was founded. Huawei was founded in 1987 by a man named Ren Zhengfei. This man is the one who wrote the fate of Huawei, making the company start on a bad foot, or a great foot, any way you see it. Zhengfei was a former officer in the People's Liberation Army of China. One could argue that Zhengfei's military background gave Huawei a solid foundation, letting them initially secure some of its largest contracts. But unfortunately, this same close military tie also put Huawei in the same pit of speculation they found themselves in. Initially, the tie with the CCP was so strong that people wondered if the company operated independently or if they were just the CCP's lackeys. It wasn't helpful for Huawei when they started getting sued early on for allegedly stealing technology from other companies. And no, these were not unfounded accusations. The Cisco versus Huawei suit is good evidence of this. As Huawei grew over the years, the rest of the world looked at them with suspicion. A few years ago, the US regulatory bodies denied Huawei the chance to require non-Chinese companies in their country due to their suspected ties to the Chinese government. Even their relationship with the UK is strained because of this. All these recounts emphasize that the security reasons have been around for a while, but they have largely remained hidden and have yet to significantly impact regular users. But that's to change as Huawei climbs a great ladder in the smartphone production industry. They started attracting buyers, increasing their sales, and their smartphones became widely bought by people, putting them into the hands of more and more people. So well defined was Huawei's success that by 2018, it was the second largest smartphone seller, only behind Samsung. Yeah, Huawei was even bigger than Apple. It's one thing when Huawei was barely noticed, and it's another thing that they have devices everywhere you look. The espionage whispers started turning to yells. In that case, Huawei's expansion and ascent to limelight ultimately led the US to take action in 2018. When Donald Trump came into power in 2018, among other things, he put a lot of effort into ensuring that fairness prevails in America's international dealings. He felt that America has been getting the short end of the stick for a long time, and he's against that. So he started going after all the unfair trade practices, as he had called them, which sparked the US-China trade war. As part of this, Trump went after foreign companies with some shaky dealings with the US. Surprisingly, Huawei was one of them. The company's reputation for stealing intellectual property has caught up with them, among other things. Trump put the company on a trade blacklist with about 68 affiliates claiming that China could utilize Huawei's equipment to infiltrate the American community, which is a hazard to national security. On May 15, 2019, President Trump again issued an executive order that banned the use of telecommunications equipment from foreign companies that seemed to be a threat to their national security. The list of companies called by the US Department of Commerce was called the Entity List, and Huawei's name, of course, was on it. During this period, there's still some ambiguity on what Huawei is permitted or restricted to. Even Huawei said in a statement that day that prohibiting the company from the US will not increase US security or strength, but will only limit the US to inferior but expensive alternatives, leaving the US behind in the deployment of 5G. Based on this statement, it's evident that Huawei, like everyone else, assumed that President Trump's executive order would only apply to Huawei's networking equipment, not its smartphones or other products. They only had to wait a few days to find out how mistaken they had been, as just 4 days later, on May 19th, Google announced publicly that it would be enforcing Trump's Huawei ban after analyzing the order's language. Although Google made it clear before that they didn't want to do this because it would have a bad effect on their business, an executive order isn't something they can ignore. So they decided that cutting Huawei off from the Google suite of digital products was the best course of action. With the withdrawal of Google's service agreements with Huawei, the key services they provided to Huawei smartphones all disappeared and were no longer available for Huawei to use on new products. This turn of events was a huge disaster for Huawei's smartphone division, as Google apps were like the core utilities of the smartphone, and the lack of them put the customers on edge as they knew their device might not function properly again. This, in turn, led to a decline in sales for the telecom company. After Google made its statement, several other companies such as Qualcomm, Intel, ARM, and Microsoft announced their decisions to cut ties with Huawei. Ultimately, Huawei was left alone. No services, software, or chips. After the ban was implemented, a lot of things happened. The most important is the lawsuit Huawei filed against the US Department of Commerce. Huawei launched a barrage of lawsuits against the US in May 2019 to mid-2020. Going against an executive order isn't child's play, and Huawei learned that the hard way, as all the lawsuits didn't work in their favor. Even the support extended to them by many US-based companies for financial reasons yielded few positive results. And the threat of Chinese retaliation also doesn't affect the US in any way. In the end, Huawei lost everything. However, they were given an ultimatum of about a year for them to transition completely, and the total ban came on April 1st, 2020. Since then, the US has denied companies permission to work with Huawei, claiming they're a threat to national security. So the Huawei ban from the US was an event that took place between 2018 and 2020, and the Joe Biden administration has compounded it by not being willing to relax the ban. Although this act seems extreme, if Huawei is truly a lapdog of CCP, the implications would be disastrous for the US. What are your thoughts on this video? Do you think the US allegation is true? Let's know in the comments section. Thanks for watching this video. See you in the next one. Bye!